Iran war update. The ceasefire appears to have fallen apart and may not have even been there to start with. Guys, this may go on for a minute or two. This is important stuff. Trump last night claimed he was no longer going to nuke Iran and have a nuclear war and stuff because they've agreed to a ceasefire and it's great and it's going to be unconditional. We're going to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, except the Strait of Hormuz is still not open. It may not open for days. And when it does, Iran said maybe they'll only let 10 ships go through for the next 2 weeks. 100 ships a day normally go through. 10 in 2 weeks, that's 2 a day, even less. I don't even know where to start with this. Iran is still blowing up its neighbors this morning. The ceasefire is in effect, but Iran attacked Kuwait, UAE, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia especially, they attacked the pipelines, the key oil pipelines that go to the Red Sea, which is the sort of escape valve to avoid the Strait of Hormuz. The Red Sea is the good one, blew that up. The Iranians the Strait of Hormuz is not open. That was Trump's unconditional, right? Oh, we're not going to have a ceasefire unless they agree completely to open the Strait, no conditions. Well, it's not open. It's not going to open. Iran says they're going to still control it. They're going to still charge a toll when it finally does open. It's going to be $2 million a ship now. Iran never controlled this before. It was open waterways before. Any ship could go through. Now Iran controls it. We've given it to them. Now they're going to charge a toll where they're going to get money. Trump gets asked about it. He goes, well, actually, we're thinking of maybe sharing it with Iran and both of us do a toll together and we split the money. So you're going to give Iran half control over the Strait of Hormuz when they had no control before, and you're going to give them millions of dollars per ship? This is insane, guys. We got a show tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern, to discuss this, where I'm going to be talking a lot more. This is a freaking cluster F right now. Iran hasn't opened the strait. They're not opening the strait. They haven't agreed to anything. Trump says they agreed to give up their uranium. They didn't. Trump said initially, oh, we've agreed to Iran's 10-point plan. Most of it's fine. Iran's 10-point plan, Iran then goes public and goes, let me tell you the 10-point plan. Donald Trump just agreed to full reparations for Iran. Donald Trump agreed to lift all sanctions on Iran. Donald Trump agreed to retain control of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran would get to control it. Donald Trump agreed that the U.S. would withdraw all troops from the Middle East. No, he didn't. I mean, he did, but he didn't. Trump last night said, oh yeah, their proposal was totally fine. That's what their proposal is. And it goes on. It gets worse from there. It's horrific. Guys, this is such a mess. He didn't just taco. He caved more than any president in American history. This is possibly the biggest strategic defeat the Americans have certainly suffered in decades, let alone ever. We lost this war. We lost 13 service members died for this war. Our gas prices are through the roof for this war. Airlines today. Oh my God. Anyway, I'll be back tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern. Do share this, guys. Do follow. And we're going to be talking more about this. What a freaking disaster.
This is very, very hilarious. I mean,
we have some major news. Iran just shut down the Strait of Hormuz again as Donald Trump's ceasefire agreement completely falls apart. So according to the Associated Press, citing Iranian state media, Iran closed the strait in response to Israeli attacks on Lebanon. And this is a major point of contention now. The United States and Israel says that Lebanon is not part of the deal. Iran says that Lebanon is part of the ceasefire deal. And so there's a huge disagreement on this apparent peace deal that Trump struck. And there have already been multiple reported violations of this ceasefire agreement, with Iran firing missiles at Israel, Israel firing missiles at Iran, and even more on the list. And the big problem with this situation is that Donald Trump said the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz is part of the ceasefire agreement. And so since Iran has shut it down again, that could mean that war could kick off at any moment again. So Trump's deal has essentially fallen apart, and it hasn't even been 24 hours yet. You know, this is the art of the deal, ladies and gents, the master negotiator who can't get anything done.
Iran has responded by saying that, listen, if Israel's going to continue to target Lebanon, which is not part of this agreement, we are not going to let ships pass through the Strait of Hormuz. For President Trump, that is crucial to any kind of agreement. And so for ships not to be moving through that very narrow waterway in which 20% of the world's energy passes through, I think this very fragile ceasefire has become that much more fragile.
The UN says thousands of vessels are trapped on either side of the strait. Video from early this morning shows some vessel movement, but it's not clear whether this was approved pre-ceasefire. But sticking points still remain. Iran's foreign minister said the Iranian army will coordinate the safe passage through the strait, and Iran and Oman will will charge ships to pass through the strait during the ceasefire period, and that's according to Iran's semi-official Tasnim news agency. All this signals that Iran still wants to have a hold on the strait, something Trump will want to limit. While lots of these points of the ceasefire have not yet been agreed, what we do know is that the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is still going to have a global impact for a while.
Iran has reclosed the Strait of Hormuz. You know why? Because there was no peace deal in the first place. Trump unilaterally said, we're doing a ceasefire. Trump said, Iran said, great, we won. Here's our 10-point plan. You have to get all your bases out of the Gulf. You have to pay us reparations, and you have to get Israel to stop attacking their neighbors like Lebanon. Well, that's impossible. Israel's never going to stop attacking their neighbors. They're trying to get greater Israel. So Israel did a massive bombing campaign in Lebanon today. So Iran said, well, that's it. You're in violation of the deal. We're reclosing the Straits of Hormuz. And did we actually agree to all those 10 points? Of course not. But did Iran agree to any of our points? Absolutely not. There was nothing in the deal. Trump just said there was a deal, and then Iran said, if you're surrendering, we'll take your surrender. So we're back to war now. Young Turks, 6:00 tonight on YouTube. Make sure you check it out for all the latest on the war.
This is sarcastic, hilarious, it's paradox, it is wicked fun. I guess I need to call the Pope in here. We need to pray.
About this breaking news we just got, where Iranian state media says that the Strait of Hormuz is now closed. And this comes just hours after General Kane, as well as Secretary Hegseth, the Secretary of War, said that the Strait of Hormuz is now open. So a big change from the Iranian regime's messaging there within just a number of hours.
Of course, the regime just shut down the strait because it's not happy about Israel firing back. Of course. So they fire after the ceasefire at the UAE, at Israel, okay? And then Israel fires back. So what do? They use their leverage. And that's what you have to expect from the regime, because they're a bunch of religious zealot liars, and they want to destroy us. So that's why making a deal with these guys, it used to be America wouldn't even negotiate with terrorists. Here we are, okay? This is what you have to expect. You gave them leverage, expect them to use it, okay? This is not something to defend. It's not something to just blame because it allows you to advance an agenda against one side or the other. Be different. Be a free agent. That's what the merch is about, to get us back to right and wrong. You're negotiating with bad guys. This is the choice you made. So now you have to deal with what comes with it. Giving them the strait gave them leverage they've never had before. They're going to use it. What will America do? We'll see. Playing it out on Twitter, blaming Democrats, blaming Obama, blaming anybody. But where we are right now is a waste of time. Of course they're using it. What will happen next? I don't know. Let's see if the administration has any ideas that don't involve making something trend on Twitter, or making a bet and making a ton of money that everybody's just okay with, who wanted to drain the swamp.
Well, that didn't take too long. Breaking news, the ceasefire in Iran is in jeopardy. Today, Israel has launched a massive offensive in Lebanon against, they say, the Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah. In reaction to this offensive by Israel, Iran has threatened they are going to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed and refuse to allow ships to pass through. Iran claims that Israel has violated the terms of the ceasefire, thus they are justified in keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed. And of course, Israel is claiming Lebanon was never part of the ceasefire terms. This is from CNN. Pakistan, which mediated the truce, and Iranian officials insisted that the agreement covered Lebanon, where Israel has targeted the Iranian-backed Hezbollah militant group. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps threatened a military response against, quote, aggressors in the region if the attacks didn't end immediately. But Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, told reporters that Lebanon was not covered by the agreement. Now, is anybody surprised that the ceasefire is in jeopardy? No. Is anybody surprised that it took only a day to put the ceasefire in jeopardy? Maybe some, but no. Either way, this is a troubling and developing story. I will bring you updates as I hear them, but it would appear, for the moment, that the right hand and the far right hand don't know what the other is doing.
The Strait of Hormuz has been closed again. Iran did say that amid the ceasefire agreement, if Israeli attacks on southern Lebanon did not stop, that they would reclose the strait. As expected, Israel cannot help themselves. They wanted more blood, they wanted more land, and they continued their attacks. So the strait has now been closed again. I don't know what this means for the ceasefire, but please, moving forward, remember, when your grocery prices skyrocket, when the fertilizer can't get through into the crops, so we have no crop yields this coming autumn, when your fuel prices continue to rise, Israel did that, and the United States. But Israel caused and started this, and they refuse to stop. They're watching you suffer so that they can murder more people and take more land. They don't care about anybody but themselves and enriching themselves. They're a colonial entity, and it's disgusting. I don't know if it's going to make any difference, but call your representatives, your MPs, politicians, if you must stand outside their offices, protest. Do what it takes at this point. Because as we've been saying from the start, saving Gaza saves everybody. Saving Lebanon saves everybody. Because we all have one enemy. Yeah?
Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz, and before I hear anything about the United States had nothing to do with it. President Trump had nothing to do with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, in a previous video, I did speak about Iran saying that they were going to end the ceasefire if Israel did not stop bombing Lebanon. Israel did not stop bombing Lebanon. So Iran took it upon themselves to close the Strait of Hormuz again. It hasn't even been 24 hours since the ceasefire deal happened, and here we are now. And I want to make things very clear. The United States had nothing to do with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Nothing. The president, nothing. The president was agreeing to the ceasefire. It was now on Israel to stop bombing Lebanon. Now, according to Israel media, Israel is bombing the Hezbollah in Lebanon. However, Iran has stated that Israel is targeting civilians, innocent people, not the terrorist group. So now we gotta wait to see what President Trump is going to say about all this, if he's going to get involved the same way that he did last year when Iran and Israel couldn't get it together and he was like telling both the kids to stop. The Strait of Hormuz closure was just announced in Iranian media, so it's barely making news across the country, across the world. So when more information is to come, I will keep you posted. But let me know what you think about this whole situation in the comments below.
Iran state media just announced that the Strait of Hormuz is officially closed. And yesterday I posted that the world would be on standstill soon. This action shows just how true that is. We have already spent $32 billion towards the war in Iran. We are already losing 10,000 jobs a day behind this war. Fuel and gas prices have already been rising exponentially due to the fact that 1/5 of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. And that doesn't even mention how many other ships pass through that strait in order to deliver goods and services to coasts just like ours. Expect shortages on many things. Expect for prices to continue to rise. Expect this last oil shipment from that side of the world to reach our shores with no promise of when another one might. Expect delays in getting to work, delays trying to get fuel for your vehicle, food shortages, and even less success in the job market. I've consistently compared this era to the pandemic because soon we won't even be able to afford to go anywhere. This is a good time to hone in on your personal skills, to develop a stream of income that is remote, and to build your own platform and audience on social media that can lead to monetization. As of now, we don't know how long the strait will be closed, but Iran is on track and already has been making more money using their natural resources and role in global politics since the start of this war than they did before the war started. They have the upper hand. They can hold the rope. They have the incentive, technology, and resources to do so. It is unlikely that they will kneel willingly when so many of the cards in this game are in the palm of their hands. This comes after a ceasefire of 2 weeks that the Trump administration said had been achieved yesterday. Yet 1 day later, I'm reporting to you
Some breaking news right now. The Strait of Hormuz is now closed once again, less than 24 hours after the United States and Iran made a ceasefire deal. And this is a direct result of the heavy bombing and military actions that Israel has leashed onto Lebanon, specifically Beirut and some outlying areas. As part of the ceasefire deal, Iran tried to bundle Lebanon, and Israel said absolutely not. They wanted them excluded, and then went on an absolute tirade. So I don't really understand why they did that. But the end result is, as of right now, we are back to the drawing board. So that is the very latest. If anything else comes out about this, or we learn anything more, I will be back to bring it right to you.
Less than 24 hours after the U.S.-Iranian ceasefire was announced, Israel has already ruined it for everybody because they cannot keep their missiles to themselves. The Strait of Hormuz is now closed.
The world has just witnessed a historically swift and successful military triumph. President Trump started Operation Epic Fury with strategic military objectives, and the United States has clearly achieved them.
Have we clearly achieved them? Because 20 minutes before Caroline Leavitt came onto this presser, Fox News was reporting this.
As Iran claims Israel is violating the agreement by bombing Hezbollah in Lebanon. And as you mentioned a moment ago, breaking right now, Iranian state media says Iran is closing the Strait of Hormuz again in response. So long.
How is the war possibly over if even Fox News is reporting that Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz? That was like the one request that the United States had, that Iran opens the Strait of Hormuz.
How's that ceasefire going? Well, Israel is bombing the hell out of Lebanon. Iran continues to bomb the hell out of Israel and other neighbors in the Gulf. And how about that ship traffic? This is from marinevesseltraffic.com, selected for tankers. Nothing. That is the Strait of Hormuz. Apparently 2 ships passed through earlier today, Wednesday, and that's it. Everything else, still all bottled up. The president said that the Strait of Hormuz had to be opened completely. Clearly, it is not. Will he end Iranian civilization? That's what he said he'd do. But we know what happened on Taco Tuesday, and now he's looking at a 10-point plan from Iran that would pretty much give Iran everything they want and make them much better off than when all of this started.
Looks like Trump's ceasefire deal is going to last less than 24 hours. Now we see that the Strait of Hormuz is literally closed again. It's because of a disagreement, because Israel is saying that they get to continue to attack Lebanon. The U.S. is backing them up in that effort. And Iran says, whoa, 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 that's not what the deal says. So back to square one we go.
Well, folks, the ceasefire didn't last very long. Iran has once again closed the Strait of Hormuz. And this is in response to Israel essentially sabotaging the ceasefire agreement by launching missiles at residential areas in Lebanon. These aren't military facilities here. These are apartment buildings that regular people live in. And this is what I said from the beginning. You cannot trust the United States and Israel at all to hold up their end of the deal. And it's good to see that Iran is retaliating towards their belligerents rather than just capitulating. I was very worried that they were just going to open up the strait for the United States while allowing Israel to continue bombing everyone in the region. But now we see that that is not the case, and the Iranians are not backing down. And now it remains to be seen what will happen going forward, because the Strait of Hormuz is still incredibly important to the United States. This waterway is where they ship a lot of their oil through, which means it is incredibly important to the entire structure of the American empire. If they don't have the Strait of Hormuz, they can't maintain the petrodollar and the dominance of U.S. currency. So as long as Iran can continue to control the strait, they really have Trump and the United States by the balls. But of course, Israel is going to continue doing anything that they can to disrupt a peace agreement. So in my estimation, I think the war is just going to continue, and eventually a U.S. ground invasion will commence. But
Time will tell.
So a temporary ceasefire has been agreed, but what has the US actually achieved? In the short term, one of the things it wanted, the reopening of that important shipping route, the Strait of Hormuz, has been agreed. But that was a benefit that existed before this war even started. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz to have leverage after it came under attack by the US and Israel. The US is also claiming victory in this war, with Donald Trump and his Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth saying that they've achieved all their military objectives, including severely depleting Iran's military capabilities. The US is also saying that it has achieved regime change, but if you speak to Iranians, they wouldn't agree that that's the case. They say the same regime is in power, the son of the former Ayatollah is now running the country, and if anything, they say it's more hardline. Iran and the US are now also going to be negotiating on things that Iran would like as well. Things like lifting sanctions on Iran, an end to this conflict in Iran, but other conflicts in the region too, financial compensation for the damage that's been done during this war, and discussions on whether or not Iran can control the Strait of Hormuz going forward. Iran has agreed not to pursue a nuclear weapon too, but that was always its position publicly. It's not clear if the US and Iran will agree on all these points, so we could be back to the same place we were before the ceasefire started in 2 weeks.
Y'all, I was finna get on here and say, you know what, I don't even give it a week before that ceasefire was broken. Child, it might not even be a ceasefire to begin with, because it hasn't even been a full 24 hours before everybody started getting back on their shenanigans. Iran, they done closed up the Straits of Hormuz because Israel started attacking Lebanon, and they was like, do you not understand what a ceasefire is? Israel and y'all president, they was like, we said we was gonna stop attacking y'all. We ain't said nothing about Lebanon. Iran was like, see, y'all think I'm playing? I'm finna close up the Straits of Hormuz until y'all act like y'all got some sense. You know what? I give it to the end of the night before y'all president come telling y'all that it was never a ceasefire to begin with. Because you know how he like to create chaos, okay? And once chaos ensues, he like to, you know, create the illusion of a resolution. Whole time it is just that, an illusion. So we're gonna see what comes out of this imaginary ceasefire, because it seems like it didn't even exist at all.
Thank you for watching Great Minds Blacks.